Hello and welcome to another episode of the Power Investor. Today is the 8th of January 2026, a Thursday. And today we'll be talking about how we can use the PAI system to make better investment decisions in the kind of environment that we have now. And the two coins that I'm going to talk about are Fartcoin and NPC. These are meme coins, they're not utility coins, and I do not have a position in either one of them. But I'm going to use them as examples to show the power of the PAI system. And if you are interested, how you might be able to use how the analysis produced by the PAI can help you make better buying and selling decisions. So again, it's not financial advice. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just showing you how you might want to be able to use it and why it's a good idea for you to subscribe to my channel and like the video, because you do get these interesting nuggets of information, right? So let's start off with Fartcoin. Meme coin, as you can guess from the name. I chose both Fartcoin and NPC because they have a higher than expected amount of social attention relative to their market cap. So they probably will move a lot faster and both upwards and downwards when the situation merits, right? The PAI briefly is a value and a color that's produced between 0 and 1. 0 is the bluer it is, 1 the redder it is. The bluer it is, the more oversold it is. It's a good buying opportunity relative to its own history. Every asset produces its own PAI and it learns from its own history. The closer it is to 1, the more overbought it is and the more time to be cautious. It isn't perfect. It does learn the more information we give it. So the longer the asset history, the better the performance of the PAI. And of course, the PAI is a real-time value. So I'm only looking backwards. I'm not looking forward. So for example, if I'm looking at the value on the 22nd of July, 2025, it only has the values. That value is only dependent on what's come before it. It's not, I'm not basing it based on what I know now today. So there's no look forward bias in it. Okay. So there are two basic strategies that you can use with the PAI system. The most intuitive one is to buy low and sell high, right? In order to understand this, we look at the time it spends in the different PAI zones. And then we say, okay, so it spends 4% of the time from 0 to 0.1 and then 2.9% from 0.1 to 0.2. And so together, they give me about 7%. So if I buy in the bottom 7% of time, that's going to be a reasonable buying strategy. And as you can see, that would be a reasonable buying strategy, right? You're buying when the price is relatively low. But of course, if you wait enough time, generally the price shoots up after a period of time, and that provides opportunities to get out at a higher PAI. So you're buying at a low PAI and selling at a higher PAI. But what I want to show you is that it does require a certain amount of patience and it does require a certain amount of thought to choose the right entry point. So for example, with this PAI for Fartcoin, currently we're at a PAI of 0.61 and the price is about 40 cents or so, right? But if we look back historically, we can see, hey, it spends about 7% of its time in 0.1 or 0.2 and maybe about 13% of its time below 0.3. So you think, okay, it spent 13% of its time below 0.3. That means it's spending about 85, 87% of its time above that. So that would be a good buying point. So let's say if you go ahead and say, I'm going to buy at 0.3 and lower. So let's just highlight that trace, right? So we're looking at these ones over here, and this is the price line. So what this would tell us is like, hey, it would be giving us signals to buy all the way at 34 cents. And then bouncing all the way down to 25 cents or so, right? And it doesn't catch the exact bottom, but it gets us pretty close to that section over there. And then if you wait for what the price is right now, you'd be in somewhat of a profit, right? And let's highlight all of this together now, right? So all the colors here. So you're buying sort of in this zone over here, and then you are selling in this zone over here. But it becomes hard to catch exactly what is the right zone to be buying in, right? Because if you extend up to the 0.3 to 0.4, all of a sudden you're getting signals all the way down, right? So you got to be able to buy in the 0.2 and lower, and ideally to the 0.1. But then the last time you had the 0.1 signal go off, it was at a price of 34 cents, right? And so in that sense, you got to figure out whether it's going to be the lower you go, the less often the signal triggers. The less often the signal triggers, the more you have to be patient in order to pull the trigger and buy at that point, right? And then the flip side becomes, okay, what point am I going to get out, right? So if you look at this graph again, you think like, hey, if we sell in the 0.7 or higher, then basically I'm selling in the top 25% of times, right? And so you can do that. Let's activate all of these again. And you can see around here, we did trigger in that orange section over here. But how would you know, right? You would have to choose to perhaps, if you chose to be in a higher band and you wanted to stretch your profits more, that would be trickier because you might not get the exit. And maybe we'll get the exit now, but we won't get the exit. But we don't know, right? So you're always kind of doing the balancing between when to buy, how low is a good PAI to buy in, and what is a high PAI to sell in. And if you do this enough times, you sort of get a feel for it, and different assets have their own feel, but it is a little tricky, right? The opposite side of that is just to use the momentum-based approach. And the momentum-based approach, instead of buying low and sell high, is sort of buy in the middle and sell as the price is taking off, and then sell at a higher time point, right? And so the 0.5 PAI is a good point to do that, right? So 0.5 would roughly correspond with about the 50% time below, in this case for Fartcoin. So what that would be saying is, if we zoom in here, I've marked it with this green line over here, or green dot over here, is that, hey, you would be buying when the price took over 33 cents, right? That's when it just crossed the 0.5. And you'd buy it a little bit lower than that because these are daily closes, but you get the idea. And then you're looking to sell when we drop below that point, right? So it provides you this natural stop loss. So you're buying on the way up, enjoying that momentum, and if it takes off, you get to enjoy it. And if it does happen to crash down, you have the stop loss also all set that will protect you. So in this case, right now, you would be buying in at about 33.5 cents. The price is about 39 cents. You're already up about 20% or so. And then you would exit if the price crosses 34 cents or so roughly, right? So that gives you this downside protection. And the way I would play that is I would say like, hey, as the price goes above my 0.5 PAI, once I make about 20% of the gains, I will sell maybe 20% of my position or so, right? So you're taking profits along the way and you don't completely round trip, and you've just taken the momentum up and the momentum on the way down. So you try and sell along the way. And the reason why in this sort of environment that's preferable is just because it gives you a very easy entry and exit, right? It's very easy to get in these emotional patterns and sort of say like, oh, it's time to really step in, it's taking off, or forcing our brains to make these decisions under pressure. And it's much easier just to walk in with a strategy saying, this is when I enter, this is when I'm going to sell 20%, this is when I'm going to exit any of my position that is left at that point. So it gives you that opportunity to play with it in a very quantitative manner and relatively low downside while still keeping the upside up. I hope that's helpful in understanding. Let's do the same analysis with NPC, different coin, different PAI, the PAI configures for each different asset together, and does take some time and some manual effort to do it, but it'll give you that same sort of example. So if you're looking at NPC over here, again, I chose these coins on the basis of the social attention that they have relative to market cap. And you say, okay, I'm interested in the bottom 10% or bottom 25%. So that is 0.3 or lower, let's say, right? So if we go to 0.3 or lower, we activate these, you can see that, hey, for NPC, we were getting these triggers all the way along here. But let's say we would choose the entry point to be a little tighter. We were only interested in, say, the bottom 10% or so, right? So we eliminate the 0.2. If we're just looking at 0.1, 0.2 and below, right? So you'd get a trigger signal over here at 12.5 cents, then at just around 12 cents, and then again you'd get a trigger here at about 9.5 cents. And if you look at the price today is about 13 cents, right? And so if you went ahead and bought at those low values, then you would probably be ending up in a reasonable profit at this point, right? Because we are above right now. So this is one of the powers of the PAI, that if you want to try and catch the bottoms, you got to wait until you get that really good opportunity right at the bottom. And then you have to choose when to sell also, right? So if we activate the full range of colors here, the full PAIs, you think like, okay, well, when do I want to get out of this, right? Do I want to get out here at 0.694? That would probably be a reasonable point, right? Because you're in the top 15% of values, but it can be difficult to know beforehand what that exit point is going to be like. But you can see the top 25% or top 20% or top 15%, depending on your own personal risk tolerance, right? So in this case, even though the daily close doesn't hit over here, during the day, we probably ended up above the 0.7 PAI value, right? And so you could have locked in a reasonable profit following that strategy. Again, if that is a lot of thinking and it's not the game that we necessarily want to play, you can also go ahead and play the game based on the 0.5 PAI, right? The 0.5 PAI triggers around 11 cents or so, and just indicated by this green dot over here. So we would have gotten into the market as the price shot just around 12 cents, and you'd still be in the market. And maybe when it hits 14 cents or 14 and a half or 15, whatever it was at its peak, you eliminated maybe 20% of your position and locked in those gains and now have a stop loss that is at 11.2 cents. Now, you'll notice that the stop loss and the buy-in is not going to be perfect. You'd have to place limit orders to make that happen, and these are based on end of day closes. But it does give you a relatively low risk way to try and play the momentum, right? There's no risk-free way to play it, but it does provide a really natural entry and exit. And if you're happy with making, 20% or so, that's not a bad return, right? If that's the game you want to play. Of course, the decision then becomes how much of my position do I want to hold on to in case it really takes off? And we don't know, but you can at least get an idea like, hey, where I am and what sort of stop loss I should use. So just a short video today. I wanted to highlight this on a couple of assets that we have touched on in the past and where we are right now. You have two strategies. You can use the value strategy, buy low and sell high. It requires knowing what the entry point is going to be. You got to be patient, and the exit point also, you have to be patient for that. You may or may not get it, but it does provide the maximum amount of gains. And then, of course, there's the other way of playing momentum. I'm buying on the way up and I'll sell on the way down. But as we keep on going up, I'm going to sell certain amounts. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Hope it's helpful. Please do like and subscribe and let me know if this sort of content is useful. And do remember to sign up on powerlawinvestor.com for email updates. We're almost at 100 signups. And when that happens, I'm going to be going live. All the best and see you in the next one.